So conscious creativity can mean a whole range of things, as we've established, but I first reached out to you because I'd seen your poetry on YouTube. So tell me a little bit about that. So that's poetry, video, photography, and you said that you don't know anything about poetry. So tell me about all of that. That's really interesting.
I don't know anything about poetry. Um, so it's funny actually that I just had the urge to do this. I just wanted to like sometimes I get inspired. So the poetry is actually for me, it's channeling. And I just get words streaming through us and I write them. Or sometimes if I can't write them by hand, I used to always write them by hand. Now I do it on the phone. Because I realize they don't go away, or I almost feel a bit like it needs to flow, if you like. If I try and stifle it, it can give me a bit of a tense energy. So now I just go, if I get a channel like that, I'll just write it out. um I was a photographer for a long time professionally, and then I stopped completely, changed direction and went completely a different direction. And I always take photos on my phone, and I'm very much inspired by nature at the minute. So I just realized I had all these nature photos that I wasn't doing anything with, and I was kind of really want to do something with them. And funny enough, the video, so I never wanted to do video. I was a stills photographer, and I almost fought for a long time against this moving everything from stills into video format, where everything's in video format now. And at one point in one job I did, I was forced to learn how to video edit, and I was very upset at the time. So this is me stifling this creative process. It's kind of what I'm getting at. It all links together in the end. um so yeah, I used to fight against having to learn this video editing because I really didn't want to, and it was quite stressful for me because can be quite technical. Now I actually find I mean, I don't do anything fancy pantsy, but it's really easy, and I have this skill now that if I hadn't have learned,
Yeah.
obviously would have put me at a right disadvantage now. Um, so the words when my consciousness shifted, I had a spiritual awakening, and I really realized I needed to figure out what was going on in my mind. I definitely had some mental health problems, as in, like, my mind was a mess. Really was. My mind was a mess. And also because I can channel, I'm empathic, pick things up from people. And I couldn't understand any of it. I didn't understand any of it. And I was actually named into the spiritualist church when I was young. So my family, I've kind of always been aware of this kind of like psychic mediumship influence. My auntie was like a bit of a medium. She used to be able to channel and stuff, and it had been there, and I never really paid much attention, when I was growing up. And then it just hit this kind of crisis point, and I was like, I need to figure this out. So anyway, I went for some energy, well, they call it spiritual healing at the spiritualist church, and they were offering a class into how to learn how to understand your like psychic intuitions and things. And that was kind of my first step into reconnecting with my spirituality. And I realized how blocked I had been and how much I was stifling, and how much that was affecting every area of my life, including my creativity, which at the time I was a professional photographer, and I felt a lot of conflict in that. And now I can, I guess, reflect back. But when I started to explore my spirituality and clear my mind, and mindfulness was like a huge part of that, massive. Like, I don't think you can clear your mind until you learn how to calm it first and be present. I didn't realize how much I was like in my mind. Like, I think I thought my mind was me. I've talked about that a bit. I find it quite abstract now trying to think back. But yeah, when I actually learned how to clear my thoughts, my inner critic, all of these
Wow.
old wounds, and then understand channeling, and actually block that for a long time, stop it when I didn't want it, and just master all these different influences I was getting. I started getting poetry. I just started getting words. It was like one of the things that just came. So I started writing them down, and it would just be every now and then back then when I first started. And it would just be because I had a lot of blocks around my speaking and writing. And when I look back, I never really used to write. I had worked as a creative, like a photographer and things for a long time. And I hadn't written for such a long time. I couldn't really speak very eloquently, and I wasn't really into words, and I couldn't write very well. And so it was all just part of my healing process and my spiritual process to remove these blocks. And that was one of the things I think that guest spirit used to open me up to the world of words, and they would just come and I would try and ignore them, and then I just started writing them down. And now now it can be a bit overwhelming. Like sometimes they just come and I just write out, I get these poems, and they're always kind of related to my life or my experiences in some way. So they're not just random words. They do have a meaning for me when I read them back, or as I'm going through that process, I realize it's like maybe something from the subconscious. I think people like to use that word. So it's like something that wanted to kind of come out or be expressed, but it generally happens for me in like certain cycles, and then they'll come. Sometimes it can be like, because I write quite a lot now. I write pretty much every day, either journaling or blogging or whatever it is. I get quite a lot of words. I get quite a lot of channeling, so I get it out. But yeah, I wanted to do something with the poetry, and I did randomly because I'm a bit like that. Sometimes I follow like a really long, considered creative process, and then sometimes I just decide I'm going to do something. And it was a couple of years ago, I just decided I was going to publish my poetry. So I did publish a book. Buy my book.
We will put a link.
This is my thing. I create so much stuff that I never promote it or anything. But yeah, so I did publish a book, and then now I realized I have a lot more poems again. And I was like, I want to do something with them just for fun. For me, it's like a creative thing. So I'm not really attached. I don't need to sell the book. This is just something that I enjoy doing, and then I can be creative and fun again, and I can bring the visuals with the photography in, and then I enjoy the process of like, I'll read the poem again, and then I'll look like, what does this mean for me? And then I can find an image that I feel like goes with it, and then I can put it together in a little video and put it on YouTube. When it's like spoken word, and you can read the poetry, and there's just an image there. And it's just I find it quite fun and satisfying at the minute.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there's like a million questions.
Sorry.
No, I was like, right, how long have we got? Right. So channeling. Obviously, cynic is kind of going, oh, that sounds a bit out there, doesn't it? And when you channel, you also, before we started recording, you said the word download. I don't know if that's the same idea, but where's it coming from?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. That's deep.
Is it?
Well, I think so. It deep in my spirituality, I think. So I use 3 words. So I use channeling, downloads, and uploads.
Okay.
Which I didn't choose. They're just the words that come. So channeling for me, it's like when I start to feel an energy that is flowing through us like a channel. And it's kind of a crown activation if people are into that sort of language. There's no real way to explain it. My mind switches off, my conscious mind switches off. I'm in a state of just being. So I'm not thinking, or it's normally when I'm not really doing much, or I might be doing something quite benign, like washing up or something like that, or relaxing. So it's normally when I'm in a really relaxed state, and then information flows and it just comes. So I'm not thinking about it. It's just happening. And then, like I say, I've kind of adapted now that I know that sensation, and I write it if I need to write it. Sometimes I speak it. So sometimes it's like as if the words, it's like I'm not thinking about the words, they're just coming and I'm just expressing them.
Is it a bit like, you know, when you're spending ages trying to think of something and you're working something out and you're really working and nothing comes, and then you go for a walk and it's like, but there it is. Is it anything like that?
I would say so. That's what I would call a download. So a download for me is when a concept or an idea, so yes, it might be that you've been trying to solve a problem. It might be that you've set an intention to understand something, or it might just be that the universe, whatever you want to call it, has decided you need to know this thing. I used to find downloads quite stressful. Now I know what they are, and it'll just be like a whole heap of information, boom, information or inspiration just put in you. You know, like when you download, that's why I call it download. Like when you download a file, there's so much information there, and you've just got this file on your computer, and you've got to like open it up and see what's on the file, listen through it, see if it works. So the difference to me between a channel and a download is the channel is just the actual flow of the information, whereas a download, you get all this stuff suddenly in your head, an answer to a question. It's just there, and then you've got to work through it. You've got to try and like unpack it or something. And then an upload for me tends to be, it'll come from my body, it comes from a slightly different place. So I'll be doing something, maybe it'll come from nature. It's generally more of a feeling understanding than a thinking. So for me, like a download is quite a thought. Like you say, like you might get a sudden inspiration and then you've got to unpack that inspiration. Whereas like an upload, that kind of, I feel it in my body, like I feel like an energy coming up, and then I have to process that physically.
So
So it's
although
like,
I might not use that language, I can relate to
yeah.
everything you're saying.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like sometimes, I mean, this is where my fascination for words come from, and the teaching in words, because I have dived into them over years. Like I love semantics. I love and just linking back a little bit to what we said in relationships, right? Because it all fits together. We can think, we can have ideas about what a certain word means or a certain concept means, and we can be having the same conversation meaning exactly the same thing, but because I'm using different words to what you would use, and the words you were using aren't the ones I would, we can have so much conflict around it. I've seen disagreements and things happening, and you what you're observing, or like you have an argument with someone or a disagreement, then you get to the end and you go, we're saying the same thing. Like you have wasted all this energy in this conflict or whatever, and you realize, oh, we're actually talking about exactly the same thing. We're just using different words.
Yeah.
And that's when language is like fascinating, you
Yeah.
know, because it can bring us together, but actually it can tear us apart at times,
If we
you know.
assume totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of my healing and things was looking into meanings, and so I often share a lot. When I was saying I was unpacking about my mental health and things, that was what I call shadow work, which again, it's just another words, it's just different words that I prefer to use. It's like the unconscious stuff. So I have this idea, this concept that I'm not really aware of. And if I become aware of it, what am I making this mean? What am I making my assumptions about you mean? If you say something to me, like if you're in a relationship with someone can say something like really small and really, you know, doesn't, to them, it's like nothing. They've just said something and we've given it all this meaning. And when we're not conscious, we have all this reaction. And like I say, it can cause a conflict, an argument or something. And I just realized that was happening a lot for me. And I had to unpack it all. And I just kind of started to slow down. I think, well, what does it mean or what am I making it mean?
Yeah.
What am I making it mean when someone says this word? And now I think I found a bit more of a balance now, because I maybe went to a point where it was a bit intense for people, because I was like, but what do you mean by that? What does that word mean to you? How is that landing in you? Do you know what I mean? I had to really, I did things like MVC, sorry, that's non-violent communication, just trying to understand better, like all these things that get entangled in words and communication. And I think once you start doing that, I did kind of dive into that a lot, and it was quite intense at the time. But now I feel like it's just more of a natural flow. So I always try to, as much as I can, clarify people's intentions, especially if I feel like I'm getting some sort of physical response there. If I feel something isn't
By the
landing.
way, if you can hear a little bit of background noise, that's the drill. So I think there might be just some intermittent drilling sounds. So my little bit of conscious creativity in the last few weeks is having the vision for my bathroom, which is going to be dusky pink, navy blue, and gold.
Oh, oh wow. Do you know what? That's so funny. All right, I'll not get distracted.
Go on.
I I was gonna I'll pull up my Pinterest thing because
Well, I did
my
have interest.
yeah, my friend did her bathroom and it was like dark burgundy color. And you know, bathrooms are normally like white and stuff, aren't they? And I was like, oh, I really like this. And then I started thinking, well, in the bath, you want like it's like a base thing, isn't it? You're trying to relax your body, and I really like I'm totally into my color on that. So yeah, I started to like do some visualization boards on how I would have my ideal bathroom, and that's what I thought. Like I'd have a bit of like so it was just funny when you said that. I would probably have like gold taps and like have a bit of like a dark, maybe it was burgundy was a little bit dark for me, but like some sort of like deep red or something, and then some. I love the idea of the navy as well. Whether that sounds really nice.
So we're going for kind of cozy and opulent.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.